My wife forced me to care for her silent bedridden nephew while she and her family escaped to Hawaii, leaving me alone in that eerily quiet mansion, every tick of the clock echoing like a countdown to some invisible trap, and I sat there, watching the boy who had never uttered a single word, who had never moved beyond the confinement of his bed, and wondered why I had ever trusted my life to a family that clearly played their own secret games. When suddenly, just minutes after the car pulled away and the roar of the engine faded into the distance, the boy shifted, a strange strength animating his frail body, and with eyes that burned with both fear and desperation, he whispered, "They want my $7 million. Please, you have to help me." And in that instant, my blood ran cold, my mind racing through every memory, every dinner, every smile that had been a lie, because the betrayal was deeper than I had ever imagined. And I realized that this wasn't just about money. It was about deception, manipulation, and a family who had built a life around exploiting everyone around them. And as I stared at the boy, who suddenly seemed years older than his age, I could feel a storm brewing in my chest, a furious mix of rage, fear, and determination, because I wasn't about to let them get away with this, not this time. I quickly scanned the room, noting hidden cameras, old documents, letters, and ledgers tucked into drawers I had never opened, phone chargers plugged into outlets that hid tiny SIM cards, every detail screaming at me that they had underestimated me, that their greed had blinded them to the one person who had seen too much and understood too clearly. And with every passing second, my plan began to take shape in my mind like a slow-burning fire, each thought sharper, more precise, more lethal, because I was no longer the obedient husband or the unsuspecting brother-in-law. They had turned the wrong person into their target, and I was ready to turn the tables. Then the sound of the car returning shook the house, the engine rumbling like a drumbeat to the climax of a thriller, and I positioned the boy where he could be seen, seated upright with a look of courage that would shame any coward. And as they entered, laughing, relaxed, oblivious to the trap that was quietly closing around them, I felt the full weight of what was about to happen, because every secret, every plan, every deceit they had woven was about to unravel in front of their eyes. And the moment they saw him standing, speaking, confirming every suspicion I had ever held, their expressions froze, the smiles wiped off their faces, replaced with shock, fear, and the first real taste of regret they had ever known. My wife's eyes widened in disbelief, her voice trembling as she stammered, This can't be happening," while her brother paled, his mind racing as he realized that their carefully constructed scheme to seize the boy's fortune, to manipulate, to control, had failed spectacularly, and I, calm and measured, held their gaze, letting the silence stretch, letting the horror of their own actions sink in, while inside me, the storm raged, because I had spent years hiding my suspicion, tolerating their arrogance, and now it all poured out in the single, explosive confrontation. And as the boy revealed every detail, the hidden accounts, the forged signatures, the messages planning how to siphon $7 million from what was rightfully his, each revelation landed like a hammer on the fragile facade of their lives, cracking it, breaking it, leaving nothing but the truth, raw and undeniable. And I watched as my wife's shoulders slumped, as the arrogance in her eyes finally gave way to fear, as her family realized that the person they had underestimated, the person they had thought would simply comply and disappear, was instead the one who had anticipated every move, understood every lie, and now held the power, the proof, the unassailable truth that would destroy them completely. In that charged, electric moment, I could see the guilt, the panic, the realization that every action, every smile, every manipulation they had directed at me and the boy had been recorded, remembered, and catalogued in my mind and in my meticulous evidence. And as I laid out the documents, the photos, the messages, the contracts, every single piece of proof on the polished mahogany table, the room seemed to shrink, the air thick with tension, and my wife's voice faltered, a whisper trembling in the suffocating silence, while her brother tried to speak but could not, as the weight of exposure, of undeniable truth, crashed over them like a tidal wave. And then I spoke, my voice calm but icy, explaining how I had anticipated their greed, how I had watched, collected, waited for the moment when their arrogance would be their undoing, and with every word, I could see the shock deepen, the horror settle in, because they had never expected me to be capable, to notice, to care enough to protect the boy they wanted to exploit. And as the boy confirmed every accusation, every plan, every dark intention they had, the house seemed to vibrate with the power of revelation, the suspense peaking, the tension unbearable, and I could feel the shift in the universe of our lives, the moment when the betrayed became the victor, when patience and strategy overcame deception and greed. And as I looked at the shattered expressions, the disbelief, the fear, the understanding that nothing would ever be the same again, I felt a cold satisfaction, a sense of vindication, Because they had underestimated me, underestimated the boy, underestimated the force of truth, and now every secret, every dollar, every lie was exposed, and their world had crumbled in front of them, irrevocably, while I, standing there with silent resolve, felt the weight lift, the clarity of justice settling in my chest. And in that moment, the mansion, once silent and oppressive, now vibrated with the echoes of revealed truth, of betrayal shattered, of suspense fulfilled. And as the sun set, casting long shadows through the windows, I knew that this day, this confrontation, this shocking, heartbreaking revelation would be remembered forever, not just for the exposure of their greed, not just for the dramatic reversal of power, but for the courage, the strategy, and the patience it had taken to turn betrayal into triumph. And as I walked past them, the boy by my side, alive, confident, and free from their control, I realized that life had handed me the ultimate lesson. That trust is sacred, that deception is dangerous, and that when the wronged act with precision, patience, and courage, even the most intricate web of greed and lies can be torn apart, leaving nothing but truth, justice, and an unforgettable story that would captivate anyone who heard it. A story of betrayal, suspense, money, and ultimate victory, gripping from the very first word to the final, heart-stopping moment.